Good afternoon, class. I'm going to spend just a few quick minutes with some review notes and things at least I hope you study or take advantage of as you prepare to do your final exam or your review for your final exam. And if you go back and think about, and it's not going to, actually, I guess it will matter. If you go to work in a healthcare environment on the payer side of the house, for the most part, you're going to be working with claims files, provider files, and member files. You'll have some other files you'll bring in to kind of, I guess, facilitate your analytical work, but those are to provide some description or depth, maybe. But those are going to be the three main files that are going to drive your daily activities. And if you reach out to a third party vendor to help you do some work, or maybe to a government agency to help you do some work, those are going to be the same files that you're going to continually to use. So just remember, those are the files that I want you to understand that you use. One thing that I want to make sure that you understand completely before you go into that final review, and I think it was probably module 7, make sure you review that PowerPoint deck on life of a claim. Understand what happens in the three phases. You've got prepay, which is essentially from the time you sign up with the health plan until you go to the doctor's office. The doctor talks to you, fills out the electronic medical record, and then the claim is submitted to the health plan or to the payer. Then you've got the adjudication phase, and that takes place, all the activities that take place from the time that claim hits the payer system and is identified as a clean claim until the check goes out the door. Once the check goes out the door or the payment goes out the door to the provider, most of them are ACH payments, but once it goes out the door to the provider, then at that point you're in the post-pay space. And in the post-pay space or the post-adjudication space or post-adjudication process, make sure you understand all of those. You've got some network people in there playing. You've got medical management. You've got payment integrity. You've got actuary. You've got a lot of different functions that go on in that post-adjudication space or post-adjudication environment to ensure that the claim paid accurately and correctly. So, as I say, make sure that you go back through and you review those slides where we talk about life of claim. It's extremely important, not only for this final test, but it's extremely important when you get out into the healthcare environment. And the same thing if you're working on a provider side. If you're on the provider side, so if you break the three adjudication processes down, if you're on the provider side, you're going to be involved in the prepay or the pre-adjudication. You're going to be doing that in the doctor's office. You're going to be involved in the post-adjudication because the claims paid, you got your money back, you're doing forecasting, predictive modeling things. If you're working on the payer side, you're going to be in the adjudication space, and you're also going to be in the post-pay or the post-adjudication space. So if you go back and if you break it down like that, the only two spaces that medical informatics, healthcare informatics professionals are both providing, both on the payer side and on the provider side, is in this post-adjudication space. If you're on the provider side, you're also in the pre-adjudication space. If you're on the payer side, you're in the adjudication space. So make sure you understand that because it's important not only for the final exam, but it's going to be extremely important if you get out in and decide to go into the healthcare environment. Also, remember that most states have a timely filing requirement. I think in the state of New York, it's 180 days. So 180 days from the date of service, a provider has 180 days from the date of service to file his claim, his or her claim, if they expect to get paid. If it comes in after that 180-day time limit, health plan technically doesn't have to pay the claim. If you're on the payer side, so that's on the provider side. If you're on the payer side, it's going to depend on what the contractual arrangements are. If it is a non-network provider, in other words, the payer or the health plan doesn't have a contract with that provider, there's not a lot, I guess, there's not a lot that drives how long that the health plan has to pay for that claim. If it's a network provider, I mean, different states have different parameters that can affect non-network providers, and that you'll have to determine that once you get into a healthcare environment in a particular state. If it's a network provider, so does the health plan have a contract with that provider? Most contracts that I've seen, the health plan has 30 days. Time that claim is clean claimed till the time that check goes out the door. Remember, we talked about that. Let's see. And then when we talk about data repository, so this must have been like module 8, I guess. Data repositories, especially on the payer side, maybe more so than the provider side. So on the payer side, make sure you understand things like, what a data mart is, what a data warehouse is. Sometimes you see it, the acronym EDW, that's Enterprise Data Warehouse. Make sure you understand what metadata tells you. Talk about the different, the advantages and disadvantages with data repositories. There was some information on those PowerPoint slides that talked about the requirements for having an efficient data repository. So a lot of these types of pieces of information, again, life of a claim, data repository. Make sure you go out there and review those PowerPoint slides. And if you need to, go back and rewatch those videos. Then we get into things like on the payer side, let me think. Yes, on the payer side, I think it's still in that same module. Make sure you understand on the payer side the individuals or the types of individuals playing in, and a lot of the data repositories on the payer side is going to be information that was collected in the adjudication process or the adjudication portion of the life of a claim, and it's transitioned over in the post-adjudication process, and it's incorporated in that information of that data warehouse. Make sure you understand, coordination of benefits, other party liability, fraud, waste, and abuse. Think about all of the activities that could go on in that post-adjudication process and what makes those up. When we talk about the provider side, so now 7, 8, we must be in module 9, that we talked about in those, not only in the video, but in that PowerPoint slides, we talked about the importance of data warehousing, what clinical data includes, what operational data includes, what financial data includes on the provider side. Talked about just, how providers use healthcare data, and it's all outlined for you there in those PowerPoint slides. And again, as you go through this, and then we go module 7, 8, 9. So it must be module 10. We talked about payment integrity, because that's the team that I directed when I was at Blue Cross Blue Shield. And one of the reasons you have payment integrity on the payer side, and not only on the payer side, especially on a commercial plan and the Medicaid and the Medicare Advantage plans, but even CMS hires vendors, third-party vendors, to come up and help them on the payment integrity side, as does the Medicaid plans in the states. And the reason is there's a huge amount of waste and abuse. I'm not talking about fraud, pull fraud aside, just talking about waste and abuse. And I think the 2022 data we may have talked about, the healthcare spend as of the end of 2022 was something like, $4.5 trillion. And of that $4.5 trillion, for something like 25% of it is considered waste and abuse. And That's why you have these payment integrity functions. That's why you have individuals in there working in the data as they go through in this post adjudication space. Again, also in the post adjudication space, going to go back to the life of a claim, because it's in that post adjudication space where the payment integrity function usually operates, with the exception of things like clinical editors, primary clinical editor, secondary clinical editor. You may have some data files in motor vehicle accidents that you built. You may have some information built on workers' comp or maybe subrogation that's percolating in this adjudication space. But the majority of their work is going to be on the post adjudication space. Remember, we talked about third-party vendors, talked about outfits like Cotiviti and Optum, and of course, Optum's a part of United Healthcare, Zealous, MultiPlan. Those are all third-party vendors that function in that, for the most part. Well, it depends, either in the adjudication space or the post-adjudication space. But typically, health plans hire them to help the payment integrity teams to do kind of high volume, low return type claim reviews, some really high resource intensive reviews, reviews that maybe the health plan just doesn't have the infrastructure for, or doesn't have the appetite to go after. So, and also when you're talking about payment integrity activities, you're talking about mostly financial work. So, in payment integrity, or clawing back dollars or bringing dollars back in house, in which the claim was misadjudicated or misappropriately priced. And you see financial reports that talked about cost avoidance, and that's where you grab and change things before the claim goes out the door. Talk about savings. Cost avoidance are hard dollars. Savings are really soft dollars because they're estimates. You think you've changed the provider's behavior, or you've changed something about the way the provider does business, and that leads to some savings. And then you've got cash recoveries, which again are really hard dollar recoveries that go toward the financial goals of the payment integrity team. See, what else do I have here? Oh, and then in module 11, we talked about artificial intelligence. Module 12, we talked about value-based video, so the value-based payments, and that's where you're going to see the AI videos and the value-based videos. One of the perceived issues with, as we've always talked about, there's a lot of potential opportunities with artificial intelligence, machine learning in the healthcare environment. One of the perceived issues with it is not only security type issues, access to, HIPAA type data, confidentiality. But one of the major issues is everybody on both the provider side, especially on the provider side, but on the payer side too, everybody's concerned about, AIs are going to come in, just going to eliminate a bunch of jobs. It's just going to clean house. And I'm not sure that's going to happen, because typically if AI can improve the marginal product of labor, it's, on both sides, both the provider and both the payer side, there may be a drive to hire more, to create more opportunities, different opportunities, but create opportunities if you can improve that marginal product of labor. And then, we talked about things that drive AI, to increase in computer power, access to huge quantities of information. But one of the big drivers is just on the provider side of the house, the acceptance of electronic health records, EHRs, or electronic medical records, EMRs. Again, we talked about, you've got some ethical concerns setting out there. So make sure you listen to those AI videos that I put out there for you. And then we kind of move into value-based healthcare. And value-based healthcare, the driver for value-based healthcare, at least in theory, the driver for value-based healthcare is going to be the value to the patient. Yeah, there's the potential to minimize the fluctuations in the cash flow to the provider. There's some potential opportunities to bend the healthcare spend curve, but the main driver out there is it's the value of healthcare to the consuming population. Value-based healthcare again encourages members to seek high-value services. It discourages them to seek low-cost services, trying to drive patients to those healthcare goods and services that are going to maximize their health status. So that's, again, going back to the patients, it's the value to the patients and to drive those health status. Value-based healthcare contracts, and it's basically any arrangement between a buyer and a seller, any arrangement between the health plan and the provider, or if it's an employer group that does direct contracting with providers, it's between that employer group and the provider. It may be between CMS and a provider. So it's between the buyer and the seller, and it just outlines, and I talk about it in the video, identifies a set of outcomes, defines the measurement of the clinical outcomes. It specifies the formula that's going to drive that net price. That formula could be a per member per month payment based on a set of CPT codes, or per member per month payment based on some surgical procedures. Or there's a lot of definitions, a lot of scope of these contracts. And again, it's basically agreement between a buyer and a seller. And that, for the most part, has pretty much got it tied up for you. Remember, module 7, 8, 9, and 10, you've got PowerPoint slides out there. Get out there and look at those PowerPoint slides again. When it comes to module 11 and 12, there's some documents out there, some information that I pulled off the internet for you, and so you can review that. But also get out there and review those videos as you go through, and as you're taking these, as far as I know, there's no time limit on these finals. As you're sitting out there taking your final and you have a question, just go out there and review the video and see if it makes sense. So that's all I've got. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, and we'll kind of go from there. Talk to you soon.